There's a reason women find it incredibly sweet when you enter from the back. It's not just the physical thrill. It's trust, surrender, and the raw intimacy it brings. It removes pressure, taps into deep desire, and feels both naughty and safe. That mix? Unmatched. And yes, Darker 3 always shocks them. When it comes to intimacy, one of the most underestimated yet powerful forces is the element of surprise. For many women, the unexpected can create an electrifying rush that completely changes the dynamic of a moment. When a man enters from the back, especially when done with care, respect, and passion, it can catch her off guard in the best way possible. It's not about being rough or aggressive. It's about awakening her senses in ways she didn't anticipate. That element of surprise taps into something primal and exciting, shifting the mood from ordinary to unforgettable within seconds. Surprise works because it interrupts routine. In most intimate settings, people often follow predictable rhythms and positions, and while there's comfort in familiarity, there's also something deeply thrilling about the unknown. When a woman feels that unexpected touch, movement, or angle, it instantly pulls her out of autopilot and into the present moment. Her mind doesn't wander, it focuses. Her senses don't dull, they ignite. That surprise forces her to feel everything, every breath, every movement, every emotion. It's a spark that jolts her body into attention and turns passive touch into passionate experience. Emotionally, surprise creates vulnerability. And in that vulnerable space, a woman feels more open, more raw, more emotionally connected. When you catch her off guard, not in a careless way, but in a way that shows attentiveness and intentional desire, it speaks volumes. It says, "I want you in all the ways you never expected." That kind of desire is powerful. It bypasses the surface-level routine and taps into a deeper craving, one that makes her feel wanted, excited, and appreciated beyond just physical attraction. There's also a playful innocence to it. The surprise isn't just intense, it's fun. It brings in laughter, gasps, maybe even a moan that she didn't see coming. And that matters, because in those moments, it's not just about the act, it's about the emotions it evokes. It's about the moment you shared that felt spontaneous, free, and full of passion. That's the kind of intimacy that lingers long after the moment is over. The element of surprise works because it breaks barriers. It opens up possibilities she didn't even know she was craving. And when done with sensitivity and attention, it doesn't feel forced or uncomfortable. It feels like a beautiful shift in rhythm, one that deepens the bond, heightens the experience, and leaves her breathless in the best way possible. When she doesn't expect it but welcomes it, that's when the sweetness fully lands. That's when her body says yes, her heart feels safe, and her mind stays curious, all at once. Trust is the foundation of all meaningful intimacy, and when a woman allows a man to enter from the back, it's not just a physical act, it's a profound display of emotional trust. This position requires a level of vulnerability that goes far beyond the surface. It demands that she lets go, both physically and emotionally, and that kind of surrender doesn't happen unless she feels completely safe with the person she's with. It's about giving access to a part of herself that's deeply protected, both literally and symbolically. And when that trust is earned, the connection becomes intensely powerful. For many women, the back position shifts the usual power dynamic. It places her in a position of exposure, of openness. But ironically, it's not a position of weakness. It's one of incredible strength and trust. When she allows this, she's saying, "I trust you not to hurt me. I trust you to read my body, to listen to my cues, to honor what I'm giving you." It's not about dominance in the way most people assume. It's about mutual vulnerability. He may be the one leading physically, but she's the one setting the emotional tone, and her trust guides the entire experience. This trust isn't something that can be faked or forced. It has to be cultivated over time through emotional safety, honest communication, and deep respect. A woman has to feel that her partner sees all of her, not just her body, but her heart, her emotions, her boundaries, and still chooses to handle her with care. When that's the dynamic, the physical act becomes much more than sensation. It becomes a message. I'm here, and I trust you enough to give you access to all of me. There's also a spiritual softness that comes with this kind of trust. It invites a deep emotional presence from both partners. He must be attuned to her reactions, not just physically, but energetically. She, in turn, feels held, not just in the literal sense, but emotionally held, respected, and seen. That creates a connection that lingers far beyond the bedroom. It builds intimacy that can show up in the way she looks at him afterward, in how she lets her guard down, in how she leans into his touch more freely. When a woman feels that level of trust, her body responds differently. It opens, it welcomes, it surrenders in the sweetest way. There's no tension, no holding back, just an open flow of connection. And that connection can't be achieved through mechanics alone. It's born from emotional safety. When that foundation is present, the experience becomes not only pleasurable, but deeply bonding. It becomes a moment where her body and heart both say yes, and that yes is rooted in trust, not just arousal. When a woman is entered from the back, her body experiences stimulation in a completely different way than it does from other positions. It's not just about the angle, it's about how that angle interacts with her sensitivity, her rhythm, and the depth of physical connection. There's something uniquely intense about this position that creates a flood of sensations she might not expect. For many women, this shift in physical contact heightens sensitivity in a way that can feel overwhelming, in the best possible sense. The deeper penetration that often comes with this position tends to stimulate areas that aren't easily reached otherwise. This includes the upper wall of the vaginal canal, which can trigger a level of pleasure that feels richer and more all-consuming. It's not just about one spot, it's about how her entire pelvic area responds. The body arches, the skin tightens, and nerve endings fire differently. It creates a chain reaction throughout her entire frame. Her breath quickens, her grip tightens, and she becomes incredibly aware of every touch, every sound, every shift. That shift in sensation also rewires how she receives pleasure. When she's used to a certain rhythm or pace, changing the position suddenly introduces new pressure points, new depths, and new emotional layers to the experience. Even if it's a familiar partner, the physical surprise of it can feel like discovering something new for the first time. And for women, that novelty isn't just arousing, it's empowering. It allows her to rediscover what she enjoys, how she moves, and how she lets herself fully feel. Touch also becomes more meaningful in this position, because her partner is often holding her waist, her hips, or even her shoulders. Every grip, every squeeze adds to the experience. Those touch points ground her, guiding her through the waves of sensation in ways that feel both controlled and wild. There's also less direct eye contact, which can sound like a loss, but in many cases, it frees her up to focus completely on what she's feeling, instead of how she looks or what she thinks he sees. Sound plays a role too. With heightened physical stimulation, her breathing changes. The room fills with different rhythms. His against hers against the silence, moans escaping without filter. This rawness amplifies everything. It's not about performance, it's about immersion. Her body is responding instinctively, without overthinking, and that's where true pleasure lives. What makes this sensory intensity so powerful is that it doesn't just affect her body, it affects her emotions. When the stimulation is this deep, her heart often follows. She feels everything, not just physically, but emotionally. The merging of deep contact with deep sensation creates an experience that lingers. It's not just that it feels good, it's that it feels real, unforgettable, and fully embodied. Psychological surrender is one of the most powerful elements of intimacy, especially when a woman allows herself to be entered from the back. It's not just a shift in physical positioning, it's a deep mental release. For a woman, this position often symbolizes more than just pleasure. It represents a conscious decision to let go, to trust, and to stop controlling every detail. And that surrender isn't a sign of weakness. It's a rare and profound kind of strength. It takes courage to open up so completely, to hand over control without fear, and to simply feel without restraint. In everyday life, many women are in constant control. They lead, manage, organize, protect, and nurture. Their minds are always active, thinking ahead, solving problems, reading emotions. So when she enters a space where she can let all that go, where her body is the focus and her mind can quiet down, it creates an emotional and mental release that is incredibly healing. Entering from the back often gives her that space. She's not in charge in the traditional sense, but she's not powerless either. She's choosing to release. She's choosing to surrender. And that choice makes the experience sacred. This kind of surrender is intensely emotional. It allows her to connect with her inner softness, her hidden desires, and even parts of her identity that she may not show in the daylight. There's a kind of erotic vulnerability in being taken from behind that says, I don't have to perform, I don't have to guide, I just want to feel. That mindset frees her from pressure and expectation. It gives her permission to melt into the moment, to moan without overthinking, to move without self-editing, and to enjoy without guilt. And that enjoyment becomes deeper because it isn't filtered through logic or control. When she surrenders psychologically, every touch becomes more meaningful. Every sound, every breath, every rhythm feels amplified. Her emotional guard drops, and in that space, she feels safe enough to be completely in her body. That's where the real magic happens, not from technique alone, but from presence, from trust, from giving in. It's also important to understand that this kind of surrender doesn't mean disconnecting from herself. On the contrary, it allows her to feel more connected than ever, just in a way that's rooted in presence, not pressure. She's not striving or proving anything. She's not in her head wondering if she's doing it right. She's not trying to please. She's simply being, fully, and that fullness creates a deeper kind of pleasure, one that touches the body and the soul. Psychological surrender, when honored and not taken for granted, becomes one of the most intimate gifts a woman can offer. It's quiet, it's powerful, and it often says more than words ever could. There's a unique kind of intimacy that comes from seeing someone in their most vulnerable state, not just physically, but emotionally. And this is especially true when entering a woman from the back. While at first glance, this position might seem like it distances eye contact or emotional closeness, the reality is quite the opposite. It creates a different kind of intimacy, one that is rooted in observation, presence, and energy. There's something incredibly raw and revealing about watching her from behind, about seeing her body respond naturally and unfiltered. In that moment, the connection becomes more than physical. It becomes emotional and deeply human. From this angle, a man gets to witness her in a state of total surrender. The way her back arches, her hair falls, her breath changes, and her skin flushes. All of it tells a story of what she's feeling. Her body becomes an open book, revealing layers of desire, vulnerability, and trust, without a single word being spoken. And for many women, being seen in that way, fully, honestly, and without pressure to perform, is incredibly intimate. It allows her to express herself through movement, through sound, through sensation, without needing to hold back or explain. The touch, too, becomes more meaningful. With her back turned, other senses become heightened. His hands on her waist, her hips, or the small of her back become grounding points. That physical contact, when done gently and intentionally, says, I'm here, I see you, I feel you. And that can feel more intimate than eye contact in certain moments. It's the physical presence and the energy exchange that makes her feel emotionally held, even if her eyes are looking away. In addition to the physical closeness, this position often strips away performative energy. She doesn't have to think about facial expressions or worry about what she looks like. She can focus entirely on the experience, the pleasure, and the emotions rising within her. That emotional detachment from performance ironically creates a deeper emotional connection. She feels freer, more expressive, and more in tune with her own desires, and that creates an energy that fills the room, making both partners feel emotionally synchronized. There's also a psychological closeness that comes from being in tune with each other's rhythm in such a raw position. Every move, every reaction becomes a form of communication. There's a back and forth, even without words, that builds a kind of silent understanding between partners. He learns her patterns, her pauses, her pulses. She feels read, understood, and desired in the most primal and yet profoundly tender way. Kind of intimacy doesn't rely on constant eye contact or whispered words. It relies on presence, on being fully there, fully engaged, fully connected. And in those quiet, breathless moments, that unmatched visual and emotional closeness becomes something that lingers long after the experience ends. It leaves a mark, not just on the body, but on the heart. There's a fascinating and often misunderstood layer of intimacy where a woman finds herself feeling more powerful, more feminine, and more connected to her sensual identity when she is entered from the back. At first glance, it may seem like a submissive position, but for many women it unlocks a deep sense of empowered femininity. It's a space where she doesn't have to lead, doesn't have to carry control, but in surrendering, she accesses a deeper confidence in her own body, her own rhythm, and her own capacity for pleasure. That, in itself, is power. Empowered femininity isn't about dominating, it's about being in full ownership of one's softness, one's sensitivity, and one's sensual expression. When a woman allows herself to be taken from the back, it often taps into those feminine energies in the most primal way. She isn't hiding. She's presenting herself. She's saying, "This is me. Every curve, every sound, every movement is mine." There's a quiet but unmistakable confidence in that. Even in a position that requires surrender, she feels in tune with her own power because she's not afraid to be seen, to be touched, to be desired completely. The feeling of being taken, of being wanted so deeply that she doesn't have to initiate or lead, makes her feel cherished in a way that's both fierce and gentle. It reinforces the idea that she is the prize, not because she's passive, but because she is so magnetic, so irresistible, that all she has to do is allow. That allowance, that choice to receive, is not weakness. It's strength in its most graceful form. It reminds her that her pleasure matters, that her body is deserving of reverence, and that she can be both strong and soft at the same time. It's also in this moment that her confidence can grow. She feels the fullness of her body, the beauty of her form, and the response she evokes. She's not reduced to an object. She becomes a force. Her movement, her sounds, her reactions, all of it creates the rhythm, the pace, the experience. She may not be facing her partner, but she's leading in a completely different way. She's guiding through sensation, through openness, through allowing herself to feel everything unapologetically. That kind of femininity, the kind that stands in sensual freedom, is not taught in words. It's felt in experiences. And this position, when shared with someone who respects and honors her, becomes one of those transformative moments. It awakens something inside her that's quiet but undeniable. The truth that being a woman, in all her emotional depth and physical sensitivity, is powerful beyond measure. She isn't diminished in this act. She's amplified. She isn't giving herself away. She's stepping fully into the power of what it means to be desired, embraced, and emotionally free. That's where empowered femininity lives, not in control, but in fearless, radiant surrender. One of the most liberating things a woman can experience in intimacy is the ability to let go of performance. In many moments, whether conscious or unconscious, women often feel the pressure to look a certain way, sound a certain way, or move in a way that matches a perceived expectation. This pressure can quietly steal from her own experience of pleasure, placing her in her head instead of in her body. But when she's entered from the back, something shifts. That pressure to perform fades, and she gets to focus solely on feeling instead of pleasing, and that shift is powerful. In this position, she's not facing her partner directly, which can sometimes free her from the constant awareness of how she's being seen. She doesn't have to hold eye contact, monitor her expressions, or think about her angles. She can let her body react naturally without a filter. Her moans aren't choreographed. Her movements aren't rehearsed. She can grunt, gasp, shake, however her body chooses to respond in the moment. There's no front-facing performance, just presence, just raw, authentic reaction. This mental shift allows her to connect more deeply with her own sensations. Rather than focusing on how to look sexy, she becomes the experience of sexiness itself, not because of how she looks, but because of how deeply she feels. When a woman isn't performing, her energy changes. It becomes softer, more grounded, more magnetic. There's no pressure to impress, just a complete surrender to the moment. That's when real intimacy unfolds. It also allows her to reconnect with her own desires. Sometimes women fall into a habit of focusing so much on their partner's pleasure that they disconnect from what they want, what they need, and what makes them feel good. But in this position, with the focus on her body and her responses, she is invited to listen inward. What feels good? What makes her back arch, her breath deepen, her lips part without thought? That kind of inward focus is rare in today's world of constant external validation. And when she finds it, it can be deeply empowering. There's also emotional safety in not having to show up a certain way. She doesn't need to be vocal if she doesn't want to. She doesn't need to lead or guide unless she feels the urge. She can let go of roles, expectations, and pressure and simply receive. And in that receiving, she finds something priceless, peace, a peaceful kind of pleasure, one that doesn't demand but simply flows, one that doesn't require her to be perfect, just present. For a woman who's spent her life being told how to act, how to please, and how to be desirable, this kind of escape is not just freeing, it's healing. It reminds her that her body isn't a performance space, it's a temple of experience. And when she's allowed to step out of the spotlight and into herself, the connection becomes deeper, truer, and far more satisfying. There's something undeniably thrilling about doing something that feels a little bit forbidden, just enough to stir excitement, but not enough to cross the lines of safety or trust. That's exactly what makes entering from the back so deeply appealing for many women. It carries with it an air of taboo, of doing something just slightly outside the norm, something that feels bold, daring, and unspoken. And yet, when done in the context of emotional safety, mutual respect, and trust, that very sense of the forbidden becomes part of the pleasure. It becomes a way for her to explore a wilder, more unapologetic side of herself, without fear. For many women, this position taps into a fantasy they may not always voice. It's not just the physical angle. It's the idea of doing something raw, something edgy, something that society might label as naughty or too intense. But when shared with someone she trusts, that edge doesn't feel scary. It feels freeing. It allows her to touch the parts of herself she keeps hidden during the day, the parts that want to let go, take up space, make noise, and explore without hesitation. The beauty of this kind of experience lies in the balance. It feels rebellious, but it's rooted in trust. She's doing something bold, but she knows she's held emotionally. That blend is intoxicating. It gives her permission to be both the good girl and the wild one at the same time. She doesn't have to choose between soft and fierce, between gentle and primal. She gets to be all of it, and that wholeness is what brings the experience to life. There's also something deeply personal about doing something that feels just a little bit off limits. It creates a secret between lovers, something that's not for the world to know, something that belongs to just them. That secrecy adds to the intensity. It becomes their private thrill, their shared exploration. And because it's not openly talked about or easily shared, it carries a special weight. It says, "We know what this means, we know how this feels, and we're in this together." Physically, the stimulation that comes from this position often surprises her. The angle, the depth, the pace, it all creates sensations that feel sharper, fuller, more intense. When combined with the psychological thrill of doing something that feels a little taboo, the pleasure doubles. She feels like she's stepping into a version of herself that's more fearless, more in tune with her instincts. And because she's doing it in a safe space, she doesn't have to hold back. That's the magic of the taboo. It heightens everything. But when it's paired with safety, it becomes more than just exciting. It becomes meaningful. It becomes a place where she can explore her shadows without shame, where she can play at the edge of her comfort zone and know she won't fall. And in that dance between the daring and the secure, she finds a kind of pleasure that's unforgettable. In the end, what makes entering from the back feel so incredibly sweet for many women isn't just about the physical act. It's about everything it represents. It's the surprise that ignites her senses, the trust that deepens connection, the intensity of sensation that pulls her fully into her body. It's the psychological surrender that frees her mind, the emotional intimacy that draws her partner closer, and the feminine power she steps into when she allows herself to receive unapologetically. It's about escaping performance, letting go of expectations, and embracing an experience that feels both thrillingly taboo and deeply safe. When all of these elements come together, presence, respect, desire, and trust, what seems like just a position transforms into something far more powerful, a gateway to true emotional and sensual connection, and that's what makes it unforgettable.